Oh, howdy all, grab yourselves a beer. It is time for some Path of Exile discussion, and today I want to talk about another little section of the patch note changes that you might have missed over when you were reading them. And in this, I want to talk about the changes that are being made to the present-day Temple of Atzoatl. So this is not the incursions where you talk to Elva in a map and she sends you off into the previous incarnations of the Temple of Atzoatl to change history, and then you come back and see what your changes have wrought in the real world. No, this is when you actually go to raid the temple after fully completing 12 incursions for Elva. Now, the first thing that's pointed out here is possibly one of the most interesting. There is a unique item, the String of Servitude. This is a pretty damn terrible item in general. However, there is one possible version of it that's good. So, the String of Servitude is a unique belt. The fact that it's a heavy belt actually doesn't matter. It is always corrupted, and when you get it, it has the mod implicit modifier magnitudes are tripled. Now, so of course you might be thinking immediately, oh, so that means that all this belt does is give you 105 strength maximum, 75 to 105. But no, the strength bonus of the heavy belt will be replaced by a Vaal implicit for a belt. So there's a number of different Vaal implicits possible on belts. And here's a quick list of them. The key ones, though, the ones that are important. Firstly, increased quantity of items found. This is the God tier implicit. If you get 5% on this, then your belt ends up giving 15% quantity. That is really strong. You'll notice that it requires an item level of 84, and this item only drops from the Vaal Omnitect. That means that your temple needs to be monster level 82 or higher, because the Vaal Omnitect is a unique monster, so it drops items that are 2 levels higher than the zone that it's in. So there is a potential to get this. However, this is a very rare roll. Most of the rest of the rolls are pretty weak. However, there's a couple of interesting ones. 14 to 16% elemental resistances. If you get 48% to all 3 elemental resistances, or even 45%, that's a pretty nice piece of twink gear. Pride has up to 60% increased aura effect, is a really nice mod, and also getting 18% increased strength and 18% increased one other stat is another thing that's really significant. So there's a number of options where it's not terrible, but generally speaking, this is not a popular unique. However, that's going to be changing. If you're very lucky, you can now find double corrupted Strings of Servitude from incursion temples of level 80 or greater. So, what this means is that you'll have implicit modifier magnitudes that are tripled, but instead of just getting one implicit modifier on it, you can get 2. And some of these are really, really strong if you get them paired. So let's say, for instance, that you got 7% increased life, tripled to 21%, and additionally you got 5% tripled to 15% increased quantity of items found. That's a pure magic fine belt. It's not for every build, but it's extraordinarily strong in its specific niche. Likewise, you could get 75% critical strike multiplier during the flask effect, whilst also having more mods on your belt. Lots of these are really, really good, and so my thoughts are, they use the term very lucky. This makes me think that these are not going to be common at all. So, you might expect that maybe you'll see only one of them yourself in the entirety of the league, and the one that you get will probably be rubbish. But there will be a small number of players that get very lucky and get a genuine jackpot hit, where they get increased item quantity in conjunction with something else. Side note, there is another line in the patch notes that prevents you from getting both 6% increased intelligence on this mod, which is 18%, and also getting 18% increased intelligence from this mod. So you can't get 36% increased intelligence on your belt. You will only be able to get one of the bottom 2 mods because these are going to be made mutually exclusive. But that said, getting one of these, let's say that you got 5% increased in and 6% increased dex, while also getting 15% increased elemental resistances, and then all of that gets tripled, that's actually a pretty meaningful thing. That's going to be a solid belt for someone. Maybe not for you, maybe not for your build, but in a trade league, that's going to be something that people are going to want. And one of the key things with the Incursion Temple was that it was really missing jackpot hits. You know, the sort of thing that you only get once in 100 runs, maybe even only once in 1,000 runs. Maybe it's as rare as once in 10,000 runs. But the sort of massive hit that then is really exciting to lots of players. These were missing, well, now they're back. Now, many rooms also grant temple-wide bonuses for the present-day Temple of Atzoatl based on their tier. The following rooms now grant 1% pack size, 2% quantity, and 4% rarity of items found per room tier. Trap Workshop, Armorer's Workshop, Sparring Room, Shrine of Empowerment, Pools of Restoration, Hatchery, Flame Workshop, and Lightning Workshop. So a whole lot of the weakest rooms are getting a small but meaningful buff. This is going to put more monsters in the temple. This is going to make the temple feel like a zone that's worth actually fully clearing. Chests in the present-day Incursion Temple that previously contained either an Incursion unique or a magic item with an Architect's mod now also drop 2 additional rare items with Architect's mods. Now, this sounds kind of interesting at first until you realize that most of the Architect's mods have been nerfed pretty hard in 3.10. I'm not really sure what I think about the nerfs of the Incursion mods. I think that some of them may actually have been necessary because of some of the ridiculous shenanigans you could pull off by taking an Incursion mod and then using a Conqueror's Exalt on it. You could get some pretty ridiculous items. I know in the last league I crafted a set of gloves with something like 140% increased ice shot damage. A lot of that was conditional damage, but still, that was a really meaningful amount of extra damage. So for that reason, I don't think the nerfs are a terrible decision, but they are serious enough in what they do to the Incursion mods that they make this change here no longer particularly appealing. I do think that there will be a couple of these Incursion mods though that survive. Almost all of the glove mods survived. The glove conversion mods survived, and the glove conditional increased damage mods all survived, and those were the best ones anyway. So, well, they were among the very best of the Incursion mods. So those all survived. The things that are gone now are the absolutely crazy energy shield belts that you could get by being lucky enough to hit a crystal belt with the right Incursion mod on it, and then hitting it with a Conqueror's Exalt and adding even more increased energy shield onto it that way. That's gone, but there's still going to be, I think, enough Incursion items. Of the Incursion items that drop, there is a small chance you'll get a jackpot here. The Poison Garden's higher tiers now add more and larger poison pods, including some that contain monsters at tier 3. Now, I advocated that the poison room in the should actually have a blight encounter in it. That's obviously not happened. They've gone with this expansion of the existing poison theme, which I'm going to give it a go. I'm not that excited by it, but I'll give it a go and see what it does. The idea of it including monsters is interesting, though. Tempest from the Tempest Generator and its higher tiers now strike more frequently, and their effects last longer. This was already pretty lucrative. If you got the Corrupting Tempest, you could then farm a whole lot of Corrupted Six Links and even Divine Orbs as a consequence of that, just by running with the Corrupted Tempest. I think that's going to be more appealing than it's been in the past, and I think there's a genuine incentive to upgrade the Tempest Generator room to tier 3. Based on the tier of the Surveyor's Study sequence of rooms, architects throughout the present-day temple will now drop map-related currency items. Got to see this one in practice. I'm not excited about it at the moment, partly because with how trivial map sustain has become in recent leagues, there's not really much demand for any map-related currency items other than Prime Sextants. Prime Sextants are in demand, but all the other ones, so Cartographer's Chisels, medium tier, sorry, when I said Prime Sextants, I meant Awakened Sextants. Awakened Sextants are in big demand. Prime Sextants aren't, Simple Sextants aren't, Cartographer's Chisels are the cheapest they've ever been, and that's because people just don't feel that there's that much urgency to using them. However, if this causes more Harbinger Orbs to drop, that will be interesting. That'll mean that there'll be a lot more access to the Beachhead unique map. That said, because map sustain is so extremely high at the moment, I think in general cases, I'm going to probably just roll over Surveyor's Study most of the time. It's gone from one of the best rooms in the Incursion Temple to one of the least valuable. The key exception, and this one is critical, very, 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 very early in the league, the Surveyor's Study is incredible to get. So the Royal Meeting Room and its higher tiers now add more magic monsters to the temple. Those of you that don't know, magic monsters are like the best thing you can kill in this game. They give, I believe it's 7 times the loot of a normal monster and something like 3 times the XP. But there's no way they're 3 times as hard to kill, much less 7 times as hard to kill. So for that reason, magic monsters are fantastic. More magic monster packs is a great thing. If you manage to find Atsuri in there, her base life will now more closely match that of her Vaal Fragment equivalent. So when they say Vaal Fragment equivalent, they mean that she will more closely match either the Apex of Sacrifice or the Alluring Abyss version. I don't actually know what the hit points on Atsuri in the Temple are. Atsuri in the Temple is fiendishly difficult though. Atsuri is one of the monsters that scales the absolute most out of every monster in the game. She scales the absolute most with action speed, and one of the effects of having the Royal Meeting Room in your temple is that all monsters gain Onslaught, so they gain 20% to action speed and movement speed. This makes Atsuri so much harder than she normally would be, because she is just so deadly when she's got that action speed. You've got so much less time to react to her abilities. So I don't actually know whether her life is particularly high or not, because either you just slaughter her really fast or she's really deadly. As a side note though, Atsuri's copies are getting a lot more hit points than they've had in the past. So maybe that is also part of what they mean by the changes that are being made to Atsuri's hit points here. Based on the tier of the Armorer's Workshop sequence of rooms, monsters throughout the present-day temple will benefit from increased elemental resistances and will take reduced physical damage in line with similar map modifiers, including the benefits to item rarity, quantity, and monster pack size that those modifiers come with. I don't think that's going to particularly make this room any more interesting at all. I think most of the time you're going to want to roll over all of the Armourer Workshop series of rooms almost all the time. It doesn't really seem to do anything valuable for you at all. Based on the tier of the Sparring Room sequence of rooms, monsters throughout the present-day temple will benefit from increased critical strike chance and crit multi, in line with similar map modifiers, including the benefits to item rarity, quantity, and pack size that those modifiers come with. Again, I think you're just generally going to roll over this. The Sparring Room is already not worth doing. The pack size increases, unless they're really big, they're just not going to be worth the additional danger and the additional hassle of having to deal with a couple of the couple of the temple architects can be really dangerous when they can land a crit. The Guardhouse and its higher tiers now increase the pack size of monsters throughout the temple. Funny thing is, I thought that already was the case. In any case, that's neither here nor there. That's already an okay room, but not a great one, and I'll probably just continue to upgrade it unless it's against a premium room. The Splinter Research Lab now always contains a breach. Higher tier versions of this room now add additional breaches and class pan chests. So, the current behavior of this, Tier 1 has 2 class pans, Tier 2 has 1 breach and no chests, and Tier 3 has 3 breaches and no chests. So this is a buff. Additionally, Tier 3 has the potential to drop one of my divination cards, that is the Price of Loyalty, which is for a 2 implicit corrupted Skin of the Loyal set to item level 25. So that's going to be something that will be sometimes dropping in there if you put that breach room in. I don't think this is enough to incentivize me to go out of my way to put the Splinter Research Lab in there, but it does mean that I'll continue to upgrade it when it's there, unless it's against something great. The Jeweler Workshop and its higher tiers now also grant item rarity across the present-day temple. Item rarity is a total and utter junk stat in almost all situations, and so basically this text is about as relevant as saying that the Jeweler's Workshop and its higher tiers now cause you to watch a cat video after you finish the zone. Really, there's just nothing of interest in there at all. It's just a nothing change. The Shrine of Empowerment now also grants monsters in the present-day temple increased attack speed and cast speed modifiers, in line with similar map modifiers, including the benefits to item rarity, quantity, and pack size that these modifiers come with. The Sanctum of Unity now gives +1 level to the monsters throughout the present-day temple, and the Temple Nexus now grants +1 to the level of monsters and items. Okay, this one's an interesting one. So, +1 to the level of monsters means 5% more damage that you're taking, 5% more hit points that the monsters have. This is sort of broad strokes. This is not exact figures. It's sort of somewhat of an estimate. However, it's a fairly accurate one. It also means monsters have more armor, more accuracy, things like that. So they're just generally higher statted. +1 to the level of items doesn't generally achieve much unless it puts you over the threshold of 86, in which case suddenly a few items start becoming valuable. You get two-tone boots and their item level 86, they're worth something. If you get Crystal Belt and its item level 86, it's worth something. And so this is a modest little bonus. I don't think it's anything worth sort of going out of your way to ruthlessly prioritize getting the Sanctum of Unity. But if you get it, I think there's no harm in keeping it in your temple and upgrading it. Based on the tier of the Hatchery series of rooms, monsters throughout the present-day temple will benefit from increased damage modifiers in line with similar map mods, This doesn't really interest me that much. Yeah, so you might get a small amount of increased quantity out of it. Doesn't seem to be very much, and I just don't see this being a particularly useful mod at all. Increased damage modifiers are also surprisingly dangerous. The numbers on them are low. You're thinking, oh yeah, plus 23% increased damage from monsters. That's not that bad. Surely it's not that bad. There's another mod on the same map that's giving plus 92% of damage added as extra fire damage. Surely that's got to be worse. But actually, you'd be wrong there. All these things multiply together, and the 92% fire damage gets reduced by a fire resistance, which you probably got lots of. So for that reason, percentage increased damage to monsters is one of the most dangerous stats around. So the Hatchery series of rooms is now going from a pretty safe and pretty unrewarding set of rooms to a genuinely dangerous and still not very rewarding set of rooms. Not particularly excited with this. Additionally, the Hatchery sequence of rooms is going to add fire damage to monsters. And also is going to add lightning damage to monsters. So there's a lot of different mods that these are doing here. That is assuming, of course, that this is correct. It may be that this is not actually meant to say Hatchery, and this is meant to say that this is the whatever the fire room is, and this is whatever the lightning room is. However, regardless of what these three are actually meant to say, I think that the Hatchery, the fire room, and the lightning room are going to remain pretty mediocre choices. They're going to be ones that you're going to upgrade away from whenever possible, and that you might just reluctantly do because you want something to do. This one's a bit more interesting though. Based on the tier of the Torment Cells series of rooms, monsters throughout the present-day temple will now start possessed, beginning at room 2. So, getting possessed monsters throughout the temple, I'm assuming that this is going to apply to Architects of the Temple, and maybe to the Vaal Omnitect. If it applies to the Vaal Omnitect, that is going to be really, really dangerous, really chaotic, and I think it's going to be one of those things that in softcore is going to be a lot of fun, and in hardcore people are going to say, oh my god, please, no, kill it with fire, get the hell out of this zone. But in softcore, I think people will have a lot of fun with this. To be honest, as much as the Tormented Spirits room has been a very weak choice for a long time, I have had a lot of fun in there. It's something that's a bit different. You get yourself a silly encounter that you wouldn't normally have, where you've got a boss that's just gorged full of tormented spirits and can do some really ridiculous things. If you still get that, but in addition to getting that silly encounter, you're also juicing up the amount of loot that's being dropped by every Architect in the temple, and also by the Vaal Omnitect, this might actually be worthwhile trying. I'm kind of keen to give this a shot exactly once in the new league, see how it goes. A wider range of strongboxes can now be found in the strongbox chamber and its higher tiers. This one is interesting. Don't think it's a particularly revolutionary change. They already could drop cartographer's strongboxes, which are one of the rarer types. So basically, it all comes down to how often are you going to get a Diviner's strongbox. Diviner's strongboxes are by far the most relevant strongbox for endgame players. And if you're getting Diviner's strongboxes on a tier 3 strongbox room, say 1 in 3 times that you get that room, then yeah, that's actually going to be worth your while. If on the flip side you're not getting Diviner's strongboxes almost ever, then this room is still going to continue to be bad. The Incursion Temple crafting benches can now be used by characters on the same account rather than the one that opened this. So this is benefit for players that have various alts. If you've got a very strong character, one that can smash their way through the temple, kill everything easily, and then you've got a second character that you just want to be able to go and upgrade a particular unique item, then this is going to be a major quality of life change that doesn't really affect game balance in any way, but will certainly make your day a little bit better. This does not allow the thing that I think a lot of us really want to see in trade leagues, which is a way to securely trade the rights to a bench to another player in exchange for an offer that they give you. So what I would like to see, and this is something that World of Warcraft has, and actually had very early in that game's history, it's something World of Warcraft has where you could, if someone had a weapon that they wanted to pass to you, not transferring ownership to you, so they would maintain ownership and control of the item the whole time, but you would then say, okay, I commit to casting this expensive enchantment on your weapon that's going to make your weapon awesome in exchange for you paying me X amount of gold pieces. Now that was a common trade that took place in fairly early in World of Warcraft's life. I believe that it was available in the entirety of the Burning Crusade expansion, which was the first expansion of that game. What I think a lot of us in trade leagues want to see is a way that I can say, okay, Bob says that they want a corruption altar in the temple. I've found a corruption altar. I've earned one by doing Elder's missions and managed to get myself a corruption altar, and I don't have any real use for it. So what I want to do is say to Bob, all right, I tell you what, you come in, and if you give me an agreed upon price, let's say that we agree upon 1 Exalted Orb plus 30 Chaos Orbs, then I will automatically transfer the right to use this crafting bench over to you. This is particularly important in conjunction with the crafting bench that is found in the Incursion Temple. And the reason for that is this crafting bench can absolutely destroy an item and leave no trace when it does so. So when this happens, it's a really difficult situation. If you've gone and found yourself one of these temples and one of these crafting benches, and then you've sold the service to someone, and then you say, yep, you know what, I've used it on your item, but unfortunately for you, the item was completely destroyed with no trace. There's a degree of trust that's required between the two players there before they'll accept that that is the result. If you could securely assign your rights to use the bench to another player, then that would solve all of those problems. Unfortunately, that's not included in the incursion changes. It's something that I think remains a feature I want to see. But anyways, those are the changes that are being made in 3.10. I'm kind of interested to see them. I thought they might have been a little bit further going, and I would have liked to have seen more monsters added baseline to the temple rather than just a few sources of like 5% pack size here, 3% pack size there, 7% pack size there. But it is a change in the right direction, and I'm willing to give Elva's incursions a few more tries, see how they go, and then reassess at that point. If you've got any comments or questions though, fire away below. Otherwise, I'm going to leave it there. I hope you have a good one.